This is RF from the Country Lunch Show on WOOL 91.5 FM. And today we have Paleo Mountain Man. Jim, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
And Budcat7 again. Say hi there, Budcat.
Hey, guys.
Haven't talked to you in over a week. Okay, what do you guys got going today? I'm just going to turn it over to you and see what comes out of it since I know nothing about what you talk about. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about the whitestone anomalies up in this part of the country. And you find whitestone up here, so there was a culture up here that used the whitestone just in a small area because that's where it came from. And I think they identified with it. And where I am, they used so much of it and carved up so much of it. I'm sure they were famous for it up and down the Connecticut River Valley and probably out west. And if you really searched, I'm sure you could find sources of this stone up and down the East Coast. Don't you think, Dave?
Yeah, but there's not a lot of it. I think whitestone is rare up in this part of the country, and even like where you live, Jimmy, you know, the areas of white quartz are in concentrated small areas. But as you know from looking at the walls, I mean, you do see some lighter stone or white stone incorporated into the walls, but not a lot. Not a lot. So pieces of marble, pieces of quartz crystal, like even in Mallory, for instance, you know, 95% of the wall is made out of just black granite or schist type.
Yeah, I guess
stone.
I live right on top of a mountain of it, so I think
Yeah,
there's so much of it.
you're kind of spoiled over there, but you have the source. You're sitting right on the source of
And
some of the white.
I will say since I've moved up there, everything's changed in my life as far as the way I see things. Not just by the constructions I've found and the things we've talked about, but I think just being around this
spiritual. It's like we
spiritual,
discussed before. It's a spiritual experience being among the walls and the different stone constructions, et cetera, et cetera. But back to the white stone, as you know from the research that I did in Mallory, I found white stone in, certain prominent areas around the site where you would see just a white stone placed, above the stone wall areas, large white stones that you could see from a distance when the foliage was gone, let's say in the fall or the wintertime. You can see at a great distance these rather large white stones placed in strategic areas around the site. So, if I was, walking through the woods there or coming down a trail or whatever, I would be able to identify the site rather quickly by the white stones that were placed strategically among the stone wall area, which I found very interesting. And then I had that mound area. There's a mound area at Mallory, one of the larger ones, and that whole perimeter, the wall has white stones, like, let's say, every 20 or 30 feet, along the perimeter of the wall, which I found very interesting, which sort of indicated that particular location was of, some special interest to the people who were living there. You remember that, Jimmy, when I did the research at Mallory, and I found
that's when I started connecting the white stones also, because it was a good way to label what we were seeing, the white stone people. It was a good way to label it at the time. I mean, a lot of things have happened since then, but that's the connection that still is there, is the white stone. And it meant a lot more to their culture than just being a nice stone that they could trade, because of the things they carved into it. They carved a whole culture into it. And it was important to them. And that proves to me, it shows to me how many people must have been around the area at the time and how much of a culture must have been here just to create that kind of artwork in that one little stone. There had to be a big support around it as far as culture and people. And I know culture can be very small at some in some regions. Culture can change from tribe to tribe to tribe, but it was sort of a cohesiveness in the area, I think.
The white stone, think about it. I mean, it's found up in Vermont there where you are, and I found it around Mallory. And now that, since that time, a couple of years ago when we first came to those conclusions, now I'm looking, I'm actively looking for it in, whatever pictures I can find, or, whatever it might be. And I found very often that you'll find cairns and other constructions with a solitary white stone on the very top of these things. So in other words, you have a cairn that's built,
I see that everywhere too, the solitary stone.
Right at the very top is a white stone. Yeah. So I found that very interesting. And, not every single one, just certain ones. But
I find them scattered around the landscape at points where you could look at that stone, look at another stone, and then look at the horizon. They sort of like marked. If you could read the landscape, if you could read this, what they were trying to say, you could walk through the forest and find your way.
It's another sign. It's to draw your attention. It's to draw. It's obviously a sign that says, "Hey, look at this."
And they're laid out to follow them through the woods. I mean, they're not just in one spot. They're not in one giant circle, a lot of them. You can follow them threaded through the woods. And
well, as I said about Mallory, I think they were marker stones,
right.
Or
yeah,
travel marker, some sort of travel marker. And apparently from the Aboriginal cultures in the Americas, you had, travel marker stones all over the place. You had travel marker trees where they purposely bent the trees to grow in a certain way, and that also is called Indian marker trees.
In the cairns, in the woods,
flat stones that look like arrows. Matt Adams from the group I belong to on Facebook, some of his people have found these flat stones that look like arrows, and they seem to be pointing. Just be laying on top of a boulder. They seem to be pointing in a certain direction. And, somebody had also mentioned that the way the serpent, I think it was Tim McSweeney from the other Facebook group that I belong to, was suggesting that the way the serpent head was facing either left or right on the wall would also be some sort of sign or arrow that pointed in, that direction. But the white stones were definitely used. I mean, there's no question in my mind that the white stone at Mallory was used as travel markers or location markers.
They were used for
in the Mallory area.
Headstones.
Of course,
they were used for all of those things.
When the spring and summer come, and the foliage is there, you can't see any of those things. So
there's part of the serpent wall that has a natural walkway through it, so you can get through it, and you have to walk on a giant white quartz boulder to get through it. I mean, you're forced to walk on this white boulder. I mean, it's symbolic.
Wow.
To get through the wall, you have to walk on a white boulder. And it was taken out of the ground somewhere else, this huge boulder weighing tons, and put there. It had to be moved to, it's symbolic enough to put that much work into finding the right piece, getting it out of the woods, and putting it up on top of the ridge, in this special spot. And you can see that it was worn down, and people walked on this thing for a lot of years, because you don't just wear down a quartz boulder. You can see where it was worn down. And I guess they repaired these walls. They treated them as if they were heirlooms, I think, over the generations.
Well, they were sacred. They were the serpent. The walls were the serpent. So
that's right.
You couldn't get more sacred than that. So, and then of course, the proliferation of the walls throughout the region. Throughout the whole northeast region, the proliferation of the walls indicates most certainly that there was a very high population of people there, and
over long periods of time.
Figures, that stone had a lot of wear on it because probably, hundreds of thousands of people passed through there over the millennia.
It would have to be that many people. I mean, to wear the stone out like that, it would have to be a lot of people. I mean, you don't just do that to quartz. Quartz is hard and feet aren't. And every time I walk through it, I'm reminded of all the people that have went that way. And it actually, once you walk through that, it points you to one of the oldest structures on the property, which is a submerged corbelled chamber. It's so submerged that it's under a mound in itself. It's covered in dirt, but if you look in it, you'll see these giant corbelled stones all piled around each other, going under the ground, and that's where the water comes in. You can't go too far into it. But it seems to walk right to that spot, and it seems to me like that's the oldest spot on the property. There's connections, and there's actually a carved stone that sort of points to that spot also. If you could read the signs in the earth like they did, you'd walk right to these sacred places. And this might have been a place where people came and they did this year after year, or once in their life they came here, or I don't know what it was, but that's sort of what I feel like, because
well, it sort of indicated to me, indicates sacred topography, as they often refer to it as. If the place was a sacred place, then they
would come and come and come and
special
come and
constructions, leave certain special things there. For example, the split stone on your property there, that's obviously something that indicates the sacred nature of the area, because as you know from Mallory, I had a whole bunch of split stones, sacred split stones in the main area, but outside of that area, I didn't find that. See what I'm saying? So
it's right at the beginning of the wall too.
Yeah, the area with the white stones around it at Mallory, that mound area, had the most number of large boulders and effigies in that area, and also many of the splits in the stone in that area were
and that the turtle cairn in the woods is very similar to the one that's here. The shape of the head was almost the same. The one you had down there and the one up here.
And it's funny, the head of the turtle had white quartz in it, just the head.
Right.
Just the head.
Right. I remember you saying that.
Had white quartz in it. Brilliant white quartz in it. And that effigy, too, for anybody interested who wants to watch the video on my channel, that turtle effigy, too, had an eye carved in it, a perfectly round, circular eye carved into it.
The one here has, the whole head was carefully carved, and you can see all the tool marks, and they carved it into a perfect shape. And you walk around the set of stones. There's three main stones, a split stone cairn, and you can see that it changes and morphs into other things as you walk around it. You have to be in a certain spot to see a certain thing. It wasn't just one stone carved into one thing. It was three stones that made several different images. And it's the three planes of existence also. Upper, lower, and where you are right now. The three planes. That's what it seems like to me.
Well,
they just represented it in the woods.
There's no doubt that they wanted whoever was there to know what was going on in a particular area. So there's all kinds of signs there that would indicate those things, but all the signs are in stone, so you have to be able to read the stone, and that's something that probably Jimmy and I are the only ones in this area of research have, figured out to any extent. I said a lot of the people who investigate these things, in my opinion anyway, have been clueless on that end until just in the last couple of months, when I did my video on all the stone walls being serpents or snakes, and I gave the my evidence for that, and then they finally came to the realization that my hypothesis was a good one. So that was like a revelation for these people. Before that, they had no idea. They saw maybe effigies, carved effigies inserted into the walls, which is definitely one of the things that is there, but they were clueless as far as,
That shows you how powerful a preconceived idea is. Oh, they're farmers' walls. They're farmers' walls. You could walk by the same wall
absolutely.
for years until you look at it differently and think, well, maybe that isn't a farmer's wall. What's that I see in the wall? And you look at it differently. Your whole perspective changes in a second, a millisecond, and it's all from the
Absolutely.
questions you ask yourself. If you ask
No
yourself the
doubt.
right
No doubt.
questions, your perspective will follow you, and the walls will come out in their true nature.
You can find more information about walls by going to Paleo Mountain Man or Budcat7 on YouTube.